Hello everyone. Today let's talk about chapter 8. Chapter 8, the adaptive mind. Okay, so I will divide into three parts. We all know that there are a lot of ways to study, right? So we will mainly talk about three parts. And before that, let's talk about how do animals respond to their environment. Actually, we also have three ways. The first way is through the reflexes. Reflexes is involuntary and inevitable ways to study. So it's most operated by our nervous system circuit. So, like this is located in our brain and brainstem and cord, and I have been talk about it in the chapter 2. So, the reflexes is really fast and reliable responses. So there are a lot of ways like the knee the knee tapping is one of the reflexes. And the second way is our instinct. Instinct is fixed action pattern. So it is inborn pattern that with us when we born, and sometimes it will released by when we have environmental stimulus. So, for example, as a peacock display its magnificent tail is one of the way of the instinct, and also the most common way is people the yelling, and it is when people yelling, it's difficult to stop, and it is one of the instinct. So let's talk about the final way. Final way is called learning. Learning is relatively permanent change in behavior. So the important point is change in behavior. After learning, we can do something new that we don't do before. So, for example, the imprinting is one of the way of learning. Like the small ducks can follow, baby duck can follow their parents. Okay, so what is our three main ways of study, of learning? First, I want to talk about is the associative learning. The associative learning occurs when we form association and connections. So I can say that if A happens, right, then B is likely to follow. So this is really important and provide enormous survival advantage for our future. Okay, so in associated learning, we have two ways of two important learning. One is called classical conditioning, and the second is called operant conditioning. And I will talk about these two things later. So let's move to the second part, is some non-associative learning. For the non-associative learning, it is involves a changing magnitude of response to a single stimulus. So it is response to a single stimulus. And there are two important non-associative learning also. The one is called habituation, and it just reduce our reaction to repeated experience. And another is really completely opposite of that, called sensitization. And sensitization is opposite because there's some increase of reaction to a range of stimuli follow in the exposure of one strong stimulus. So in general, habituation actually responds to the milder stimulus. And sensitization respond to stronger stimulus. And finally, we will move to the final part of the learning mode. It is called observational learning. So for the observational learning, we also have another name called social learning, or we can call it modeling. It is by watching others' action and like other organism, and it's really important to focus on the culture through family and relationships. So I would say it's like imitating. Okay, so we move to each part. First, we move to the associative learning, the classical conditioning. So I will first incorporate some concept, the terminology. So we have stimulus and response, and each will divide it into conditioning and unconditioning. This is also, and I use say and you say to represent. And for the conditioning stimulus, this is environmental event, and it is like you learned this is not inborn, you learned by the environment. And unconditional stimulus is innate. That's always with you. So in the even Pavlov dog's experiment, the conditioned stimulus is a CS. It's like we need to learn after we need to learn by classical conditioning. Then we have this is a metronome, because people do not have the response to metronome innately when we are born, and our UCS, like the things we innately have the response is the food. So for the response we learned, and this response, we first talk about UC. UC is you do not learn and you have innately the response is salivation to the food, right? Like the dog, we will salivation when he has food. And for the conditioned response, it will be the salivation to the metronome, right? So this is learned by the environment. And also another thing is called the neutral stimulus. So neutral stimulus is the metronome before the classical conditioning. Like neutral stimulus does not lead to any reliable response. So I will elaborate the stage. First, before everything happened, we have the food. So the food is UCS, and we we have the dog has a salivation. This is UCR. And also we prepare the neutral stimulus, the metronome, and we found that it has no any response, right? And then during the classical conditioning, we have the metronome and food, so it is UCS and NS, and we have salivation to the food, it is UCR. So finally, in the last stage, after conditioning, we have the metronome, and then the dog will salivate it, but this is because of metronome, so CS to CR. And this is mainly the stage of classical conditioning. And now I will elaborate the other term. First is the acquisition. The acquisition refers to the development of CR. Development of the CR is like development of the dog salivation to the metronome. So when UCS and CS together, it will have the CR, right? So the acquisition need two important things. One is it must be the proximity, like the time will be close. If the food appeared and if the metronome appeared, I don't give the food immediately, there's not any correlation. So the second is contingency and correlation. Can we relate the two things together, right? So will you relate your headache to eat cakes, right? This is contingency. And then I have another term called extinction. Extinction is when CR disappear, when the salivation to the metronome disappear. This is extinction. But extinction is not same to the forget. Why? Forget is just left something out. But for the extinction, this is like new learning override old learning. And the different point from the forget is like the extinction has the spontaneous recover. If I stop give food after the metronome, then the dog will stop salivation. But if I give the metronome and food again, then the dog will continue to salivation again. So this is sponge recover. And the second thing is this is really important to adjust to the future change. So this is like cover two terms. It is important. If we do not have this function, you bite by the dog once and you will free the dog for whole life. And the third term is inhibition. Inhibition is you use CS to predict the UCS will not occur. So for example, I give you the light and give you the shock, and sometimes the light will not continue with the shock, then you will be not afraid. So this is the best way to to predict. So light and no shock. Light is CS and shock is UCS, right? Okay, And finally, the two concepts I need to mention. One is generalization. Second is discrimination. So generalization is like if you have been stung by bees, you are afraid of yellow jacket, and if the animals has been bite by a lion, it afraid all lions. So you will generalize all lions are dangerous as the lions that bite you, and for the discrimination, it's totally counteract. Like if you are afraid after the war, you're afraid the backfiring car, but after a while, after a period of time, you will discriminate the different between the war and car, so it will reduce your PTSD. And for the inhabitation, I also has an important thing to say is that the latent inhabitation. The latent inhabitation is like it says that you will take more time to learn familiar CS than unfamiliar CS. For example, you eat pizza every day, you will not relate it to your headache, but you eat chocolate once, you will relate it, right? And the last concept is high order conditioning. So for high order conditioning, CR can occur in response to stimuli that predict CS. So CR predict CS. This is high order conditioning. So in this example, CR is the salivation to metronome, and CS is conditioned stimulus. Before the metronome appeared, you just salivated. So it is high order conditioning. So after we talk about the classical conditioning, what is the inferences on a lot of ways? Like what is the inferences on cognitive and biological functions? So first we think human mind is a black box. So the things we need to mention is like we need to avoid research simple animals and then generalize to people, because they are different structures and we cannot easily generalize animals to people. And the second thing is UCS will related with a lot of things. For example, you have bite by a dog and you're afraid the maybe all the dog, and also sometimes you will say the dog calls and you are also afraid. So this is a relation. And finally the elements of surprise. For example, your computer has a blue screen and then you will be anxious because you know it is broken. And next time, your blue screen has a funny sound, and you are also anxious because it's also a signal of blue screen. And the next time the funny sound has been appear separately, and you are not bothered to learn much new signal because this do not provide any additional information, right? So in this way, although the contiguity and contingency are both have, but it still cannot happen. So this not provide any useful information. And I will elaborate the taste aversion. It is a really important part. So the taste aversion, we already have a lot of example, but taste aversion is not an example of classical conditioning. It is some example of behavioralism. So, one person had drawn Garcia. He do not believe that stimuli were so interchangeable. So he made experiment, and like the rat and the noisy water. So he found that the rats are readily to the association to the taste and illness. And oppositely, the birds actually already opposed to the association to visual and illness. So it's actually very different. So he says the stimulus so interchangeable is not the truth. So when do we apply to the classical conditioning? We can use it to overcome fear, right? Now we have two ways. One is exposure therapy. Like you just have the strong stimulus of the things that you're afraid, and you put yourself in that a lot of time. And another way is counter conditioning. Counter conditioning is John Street, Peter, and for example, associate the thing that you don't like with food. And a variation counter conditioning used to treat fear is known as systematic desensitization. Okay, so this is like you connect phobia with relaxation. Yeah, and also we can apply it to treat addiction, right? Like some environmental cues and the concept of prejudice is a negative attitude towards person, and this is also we can apply the classical conditioning. And finally, the most important thing is schizophrenia, and that is a relation with latent inhibition, because people with schizophrenia has really has really less latent inhibition, because schizophrenic people will think that although you eat pizza every day, but you have illness, it's also related with the pizza. And now let's move to the operant conditioning. The operant conditioning is by the experiment that Sondrak has the rat pull the bar, this experiment. And this is different from classical conditioning because one, it is associated with consequence, and the second is that it is a voluntary behavior. So the type of consequence will divide it into 4 parts. So we have the things to increase the consequence, and we also have things to decrease the consequence. And for the increased consequence, we have the positive reinforcement and we have the negative reinforcement, right? So this is also positive and negative. So this is called reinforcement, and this is called punishment. So positive reinforcement is to increase the frequency of the things associated with adding a stimulus and with a desired outcome. For example, I want you to study more, then I will give you candy. This is some positive reinforcement. I want you to increase the behavior of the study. And this is really strong method. For the reinforcer, we have the 2 things. One is some primary reinforcer. One is the secondary. So this is reinforcer. So for the primary reinforcer, it is things that's innate and not be learned. For example, the food. And secondary is what you learn by environment, like money and grade. So candy is an example of primary reinforcer. Now let's talk about negative reinforcement. Negative reinforcement is a way to increase behavior and to avoid or escape the things happen. For example, if it is really different from the negative reinforcement to positive punishment, because positive punishments decrease the behavior. For example, your mom told you that you do not need to do the course if you study. So this is also want you to study more, but it's avoid to do course. And finally, I will talk about the positive punishment. Positive punishment refer to adding an aversive consequence to a situation, reduce the frequency. So, for example, the rat. This is some reduce frequency. For example, the rat press a bar and then will get electric shock. So the aim is to let it get not less shock, but he improved the behavior of press a bar. And another example is like Your mom also told you if you watch too much TV, then you need to do more course. So you watch TV, the things will decrease. And the final thing is the negative punishment. Negative punishments remove something desirable, like the rat press a bar and there's no food, so it will decrease. And also the last example, your mom told you if you watch more TV, if you watch too much iPad, she will take away the iPad. Then you will watch this iPad, right? So you putting umbrella to avoid getting rain. This is a negative reinforcement. Like you don't wanna have wetted on your shirt, so you increase the behavior of take the umbrella. So we have a amazing result is that for the reward and punishment, for the adults it's actually the same, but for the adolescent they will lack the reward better, so we need to use more reward. And also it has like ethically problem and like sometimes unwanted behavior, so we can also use the extinction we mentioned before. And now I will talk about the operant conditioning. The reinforcement actually has the schedule. The schedule have 4 types. It's divided into the ratio schedules and also interval schedule, the time. And then the two will divide it into the fixed, and variable. Also fixed, variable, and I will use the F4 and VR, Fi, and Vi to represent. First, we talk about the fixed ratio. This is it's occur a set number of time, and for example, a worker do 2-3 things, and then will get $1. And for the VR, it's require the number of time that behavior occur fluctuate. So the really famous example is our casinos. It will give you rewards in different times. And for the I-Fi is like you have the things that the time that must pass before reinforcement become available. So the time is fixed. So for example, 3 minutes and it will give you a reward. And the VI is like you sometimes will have the reverse for 30 seconds and sometimes has 1 minute to get reward. So it is quite not sure. And except these four things, the partial reinforcement effect in extinction has important influence. So the partial reinforcement, this is like two things I need to mention. First is like the continuous is actually more obvious. For example, your boss pay you each day. You notice that you will notice that if he don't pay, but if your boss pay you each month, you will not notice if he do not pay really immediately, right? Okay, and the second thing is partial schedules is to teach organism to persist if there's no enforcement. For example, you go fishing and do not have the fixed reward, but the partial schedule will provide you and make you to continue. And then the method of success appreciation. I will mention one of the things is chanting, because it's a really important way to use. It's just like to break down behavior into manageable steps. So it is also being used in the treatment of ASD. Okay, so finally we talk about the influence of the operant conditioning. So cognitive operant cognitive function, it has a strong meaning in learning, and a lot of animals can construct a cognitive map, such as rats and also chimpanzee. Okay, so in biological, it has a term called instinctive draft. Like you teach the pig to put the corn in the box, and it will give the food, but for a while he will fall and he will not continue the thing, although the condition are met, but the instinct drift will not let them to continue the operant conditioning. And the third thing is in the social influence is also like the learning, and we can successfully apply the operant conditioning in a lot of ways, such as the token economics, and this is not inborn in people, but we learn to do it and try to motivate us to do things. So this is our operant conditioning, and I will move to the final part, observational learning. So observational learning has a famous example of the Albert Banderas. He has the doll, and the adults go to find the doll, and then all the children will imitating the behavior, although they do not heard before. So this has like the disadvantage. It will make children have extent of aggression, and just take the example, if people always play the violent games, then it will become more violent and get used to the violence in the scene and put it in the reality. So Bandra said the modeling has 4 steps. It is first is attention. You should draw attention of what they do, and second retention. You should memory the behavior. Third is reproduction. Just do the same things, and final is motivation. You have the aim and why you need to do that. So the cultural transmission of learning has also really important, really important influence. So, for example, the memes you will send the people who gave you, and you will imitate this behavior. So this is our chapter 8, and the today's the important part is the classical conditioning and the operant conditioning, and this big 3 part: associative learning, non-associative learning, and observational learning. And we will focus more on associative learning, and this 2 has mentioned a little bit, and the 3rd part is imitating. So I hope I have elaborated clearly, and this chapter is not really hard. Okay, that's all.